Memo bibi akwaba eba Melodies TV so. Asemwaba. Na I come here bearing documents. You be read a lot of news articles. You be read write-ups from Impinion 4. What I want you to do for me and they say nyasun. And one mepe nyasun. At the end of the day, obetias here because things are still going on. Things are still happening. But Ghana for Msenkrofo bebe name da ho. Na nini na treo MPP aban bonia womudie and how a lot of them at this point have to be held accountable for some of the things they did. It's as simple as that. Now let's go back to 2017. 2017 during a year President Akufo Addo the first term omo e conceive bibi na omo freno the Development Bank Ghana, your friend DBG. And this was around time President Akufo Addo mobile no more closely banks, indigenous banks Ghana. But omo eba bete bank bi an friend the Development Bank Ghana. Now, a quick check. Oko Google, now you see Google AI. Now bisa AI and say Development Bank Ghana. When was it established? Obetra say in 2020. Now oba down Obetra say the Development Bank Ghana was conceived in 2017. That is a 2017 MPP4 by Enomunya Adwin. So better bank be a friend the Development Bank Ghana. Into Omunya Adwin 2017. 2020 Enomu established here. And then they were awarded the license to operate by the Bank of Ghana in 2021. It is our Development Bank Ghana ya ka ho asemi. MPP4. Ena edi Adwin by omo anomo set a bank ne up. And no one no yeah wamoma bank ni license say bank ni in pretty. Now, okwa the Development Bank Ghana. Now okwa ko ready about it. Asem obeka say the Development Bank Ghana is a government-owned development bank in Ghana, owned by the government of Ghana. The institution has received grants and loans for on-lending to Ghana's commercial banks from the African Development Bank, the World Bank Group, and the European Investment Bank, the German Development Bank, and it goes on and it goes on. Now, and also say it was founded in 2021, and it makes sense. That is here because conceived in 2017 under the MPP, established in 2020 in letters, and then awarded the contract in 2021, and then they launched it June 2022. So the Development Bank, no, everything about the Development Bank is the MPP. Now, I'm saying, and yet say. The Minister of Finance Akufo Addo was saki impenyufo wo Development Bank ho. And Akufo say, "Hey, na Ghana for sure say so mo kasa." Say, "Hey, ebe mo beka, and the President Akufo Addo bank awoti na mo NDC mobile mo aba be saki Akufo and all that." Inti asasi radio kra ede intem wa wonim. E just asasi radio mo ante. Omo de intem eba be report e wa asem ne so. Na ma me read the report we did show we go into the main issue. Development Bank ono edien na aba. Auditing na womoka se womonye no edien na aba from the auditing chronoseme na akoso. But this is what 3 days ago the finance minister in the person of Akufo Addo as the government terminates appointment of independent directors at Development Bank Ghana over audit findings. As the finance ministry cites procurement violations, value for money breaches, and forensic report concerns in sweeping leadership shake-up at Development Bank Ghana. Also, the government of Ghana has officially terminated the appointment of all independent directors at the Development Bank Ghana Limited, DBG, citing serious findings from recent procurement and forensic audits. In a letter dated June 17, 2025, signed by Finance Minister Dr. Kesel Atoforsen, the ministry noted that the decision follows the outcomes of a procurement review, value for money review, and a forensic investigation report involving the bank's operations. As the ministry acknowledged receipt of resignation letter from one of the directors dated June 3, 2025, but emphasized that the dismissal was prompted by governance failures and audit concerns, not voluntary departure alone. Key audit concerns cited: breaches in procurement. Na me besa o shanen so the entire yapame sa Development Bank in Penifoi. 1. Breaches in procurement procedures. in procurement. And you see, it was one of the things under President Akufo Addo. By this time, you say under President Akufo Addo, procurement breaches. And you see, people don't understand. If you are in a country, and especially government-owned enterprises and government institutions, yes, breach in procurement, it simply tells you, say, people are making money. As simple as that. Because Ghana Mratre say, government agency be, maybe a person kokoton kunya, fa adie no ebra bonte, na Ghana ni bia wobetumi aye kunya no, wombra mbe bede, na nye competitive bidding. So at the end of the day, nipa wobe winning ni ehun say yes, wa fem, na wo di say or say o winning. But in a government institution, na ye oti bibi say yes, obi a breach procurement procedure, na tre say, or no, ebi a penyin na what is say company na no. Onim sen ya ye konya. Nanso, opeso di sika nti, obefa echi, na wono ankasa akwakoti company. Na wa tre say company no ni company ye konya, na wa gi contract no. No de akwakoma wo bia wo ye konya. Sika ne ba na ebia ono no what ne share. So into what is a government agency bia yesi procurement breacher, na tre say penyi bi e wo company nim. Sika na kwa run ne pockets. And I always state this, and then ma a year ABAJ answer the MPP beba abemu near send the bank account sika demu ye 4,000 cedis. MPP ba abemu ye na fe 40 million Ghana cedis ne dem. It was all because of our procurement in Sensemi. To me kwaji contracts. Or no you be not procurement for anu. Or then the company beji contract so ye akwan. Meanwhile on ye akwan. O we are no akwa ton contract no. Ama contractors a womu ye akwan ya ebia. O mo buy ya yamfa contract na mo. No wa ton amomo. Inti contract no kwan no say ye 10 million ene da so a. Obeton ama contractor no 1 million. No nya no 1 million with no work done. And no ene ya dia MPP4. Omo ye under President Akufo Addo, one of the things I want the board Ghana Chronopa and no. It's one of the things in the site it was a year development bank Ghana say a course. The second one was a lack of value for money assurances. Actually say lack of value for yaka say value for money. Okay, obi enim say ebia senya make an ekonwa no obi enim say ekonwa no ba ko ye ope konwa papa na yese ne boarding kra ebia ba ko ye 50 cedis. Na wo no ekonwa no chance okoto ba ko 1,000 cedis. A lack of money, like a lack of value for money. What you say? Ekonwa ye ni enim say 50 cedis. So dia okoto na ne boy den say dia o be ka chance ba ko 1,000 cedis. Da bi we buyen. Nti eno nso ye say ade e course ewo sa development bank ono. And then red flags raised in a forensic investigation. It was said the government has instructed the affected individuals to return all company property in their possession as part of disengagement processes. It was said governance and public accountability in focus. He went on, or say, this sweeping move by the ministry signals intensified efforts by the government to hold leadership at public financial institutions accountable. Na me say even as I see radio cry say NDC are buying we no they are holding people accountable. Especially people in the financial sector. I say it comes amid ongoing scrutiny over how state-backed financial institutions managed public funds, particularly in the wake of Ghana's IMF-backed fiscal restructuring agenda. Development Bank Ghana, established to provide long-term capital for key sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, and SMEs, plays a crucial role in Ghana's post-COVID economic recovery. The integrity and efficiency of its leadership are therefore under high public and international scrutiny. I say, what's next for Development Bank Ghana? While the ministry has yet to announce replacement stakeholders, including multilateral development partners, we will be watching closely to see whether new board members are appointed under a stricter vetting framework. Analysts suggest this action may restore investor confidence and reinforce transparency within Ghana's financial governance space. Inti asasi radio report omo ye ne say, ende omo head the NDC abanbe ye omo de nkrofo fufuro be kwa kogu ana, but omo susu say NDC de nkrofo fufuro gu ha ebe build back confidence because sa nkrofo ya MPP for di omokokogu hono omo say the confidence, investor confidence and stakeholder confidence. Also, the termination of all independent directors at DBG underscores the government's commitment to financial oversight and accountability. As investigations continue, the public and stakeholders await the naming of new leadership and potential legal implications stemming from audit revelations. And so it goes on and on and on. And so basically this is the letter. Now let's come to the main story for today, right? So you understand what's going on. Let's come to the main story for today. Now, we Bright Simmons. Now, any Bright Simmons say we're vice president for Imani Africa, one of the biggest policy think tanks in the whole of Africa. Now, or the introye bi eba betuja, or the articles bi be here unim. Now, saying Bright Simmons be try ade bi on social media unim nentia because a lot of inyame bi ene twitwiniti Ghana for react no. Bright Simmons one because under MPP, Bright Simmons was talking about all these things. Now, so at the end of the day, Ghana for young funny serious. And so now saying be a baby NDC for be react ye ka say ya investigation ye hu say the AC ni asake pelbon say Bright Simmons about betro not the article at all say in 2022, in 2020, in 2021 the metro ye ni the mekan ye ni the ye ni. So this is what Bright Simmons is writing. Or see, in November 2024, we got wind of a civil war inside Development Bank Ghana, Ghana's largest development bank. Into see or no, November 2024. Eno nyantie say ntokwa kesie bi ko ekoso ewo ho. MPP time. Osi ote say ntokwa kesie bi koso was our bank nim. Arrayed on one side were die-hard compliance, risk and internal audit types. On the other side was the main bulk of the board and management. Intino ntokwa na ekoso no na between nkrofo mienu. Baako nkrofo bi a omo aye omo adwen se yenye audit, yenye nyama ye, yenye ne pepepe. And then the other people are money san nkrofo we ekon. The board and the management and the board members na ato forcing. Waba betro letter say yempami omo no. Omo nti no omo ne omo a womo say bibia nye fine. Ana omo a womo tre say chale mayembo kro no yenye we no. Na audit internal audit ties ni compliance, die hard compliance no. No money omo serious civil war. That is what Bright Simmons is saying. Ntokwa gidi. I see, 2 directors had resigned in protest at governance failings. I have detailed the source of the conflict here. And Obabe in Bright Simmons. So Bright Simmons made a post in a year 2024, right? And I'm telling you, these things, he was writing them as far back as 2024. Ghana for na ye. So he made a post in 2024. And he explained in 2024, a course. Now let's go and read that post and get understanding. So this post was from Bright Simmons, 12 November 2024. Ghanaian Development Bank accused of blowing World Bank and European cash like water. Inti World Bank for sika any European cash, European Bank for sika ye de buy no. Say yes sir, Development Bank here President Akufo Addo for ete no, and President Akufo Addo te no. Omo disikano say ensue or see blow it like water. And that is the article. Let's read it. Or say there are fierce battles raging in the plush hallways of Ghana's newly minted development bank, DBG. On one side is a plucky internal audit unit. On the other side are arrayed the well-heeled executives and board members supervising over the disbursement of tens of millions of dollars invested in the Development Bank Ghana. To understand this fight, the reader must bear with me as I take a long detour. As I take a long detour to chronicle the journey of Development Bank Ghana, impatient readers may skip to the concluding sections. Into I say, obetre nsemu nanso senya obetre nsemu mu ewa. Ati ase ntino yenya abotre ni yentie no se onni abotre a obetumi akọ at the end of the article, and also atro bibi wo ho a ebeboa. But let's go through it. I say, why another development bank? Seriously, when him say you were a Greek development bank, and you see, it was one of the things and not NDC for air cassetia. Do you know why? You don't close down indigenous banks and then turn back and say one open so will be another bank. Meanwhile, you were a Greek development bank. As a development bank, yeah, what they basel or a Juma or they babe, a Greek development bank clearly could have done that. And as a Exim Bank, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama say, sa bank no so nanke betumi ya say Juma no. But you see what the NPP were doing, a Greek development bank no more DG loans. Allegedly, Owusu, even saying gifty the lady ya, national service for. Atias ye. Aha. Inti Bryce Simmons question and no bisane say, why another development bank? Seriously. As the DBG was set up in part to address the appallingly low private sector credit levels in Ghana. Credit to private sector actors in Ghana as a share of GDP was at the time lower than the level in Ivory Coast, only a little above a quarter of the benchmark of its global peer group and lower than half of the level in Kenya. As measured historically, private sector credits as a share of GDP had compared to 2014 fallen by a third at the time of DGB's conceptualization in 2019. Things are actually worse today. The figure is just a little above a third. Now, we'll see causes identified for this sad state of affairs included the ridiculously high interest rates currently ranging between 30 and 60% on the market, except for the few blue chip companies that have successfully raised bonds on the Ghana Stock Exchange for less than 25%. Weak domestic capital markets, shallow pensions, and asset management pools, the crowding out effect of excessive government borrowing, and the historically high risk of failure of significant sections of the financial industry. Unsurprisingly, only 8% of small enterprises can meet their investment needs through the banking sector, and medium-sized enterprises at 15% fare only a little better. It was said at the time of setting up DGB that the share of Ghanaian respondents to the Findex survey who reported access to credit for starting up or expanding their business had declined from 10.2 in 2014 to 7.5 in 2017. Now, into Obisa say, DGB ne di na Akufo Addo aban esete na wo treatrem say because of credits in the private sector. Now, your creditor simple bosia. I mean, in order for you to understand everything, no, you can't creditor bosian sem. It is our time no private sector no. Now omu epe bosian, omu hia bosian, omu nya, omu ko banka na interest work other banks no. Bosian okoji sika wo banks a wo de koye adwuma interest a wo betua 30% to 60%. Into na private sector ni nye sika enye adwuma. And it was affecting the GDP because in the private sector, mama wati asye, any smart businessman will tell you, say eye bosian eno mudi ye adwuma. And the contractor wa Ghana owo sika se den. Onfa ni sika nkonko yi kwan. Eye bosian ati asye. Inti sikeni bia eye bosian eno mudi bi enwuma. Inti omu hu ne se na number na aba form. Private sector no shut it down ewo Ghana because omu nye sika enfan omu nya bosian enfan bi enwuma. Enti ho na MPP abanka se ende yenkofa bank we Ibrahim Freno the Development Bank Ghana. At least no so obebo bosian na obeba ba beje bosian free ne hokra na the rate no ebe kete. Ti ebe ma private for no enye sika edi ayede edi akwa akoye adwuma na ma ye private sector because you see the private sector also employs a lot of people. In fact, I think that the private sector even employs a lot of people than the public sector in every country. In any country, bia bo pese udi ye bia no. E was a private sector no employ a same public. What you say? Inti basically that was the reason why I almost set a bank no. Inti and then now we treat him in the first year and then the second event saying paragraphs. Now, see, distortions in the allocation of capital also featured as a strong justification for DBG's setup. Despite agriculture's 19% GDP contribution in 2019, only 5% of bank credit went to the sector. The PwC visibility study for DBG's setup was said to have identified a $28 billion financing gap in 2020 for manufacturing and services that existing financial institutions would be hard-pressed to fill. The small and medium enterprises financing gap had, around the same time, been pegged at $6.1 billion. Even where funding is available, it is often short-term and thus less useful for capital investments in sectors with long payback period, such as manufacturing and advanced services. Furthermore, the demand for adequate collateral virtually rules out the majority of SMEs, especially those run by women who already suffer an 82% gap in capital investments versus their male colleagues. And you see, that's one thing I like about Bright Simmons. You see, or Kasa, or the facts and figures, any data, what he has here. And it was sort of explaining capital. Another thing that Emma Adie we abane say, your Ghana sector ni mu ankrofo bring here sika, just as I was saying, amudi be yejuma. Na wo Ghana ha say ya emma kra na dodo na no omo pa na nka tan here sika pa na so ya na ehho aye den amomo. It was one of the reasons in here say the bank we den eba basically. I say development banking is a part Ghana has tread quite a bit. And so he went on to give the history of development bank and all that, give the history and the data, every single thing. What you say? I mean, Simmons the giant and some of now let's go to the reason why we are here. Okay, say maybe okay, say if we need to skip or say to understand this blah 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 blah. Impatient readers may skip to the concluding sections. So let's skip to the concluding section because at this point you understand what you are saying. But you here, Bonia MPP 4D. At you say, Bonia MPP 4D ya. Ama ende bank no. And who sikashi. Auditing na eba and what are they saying about it? I mean the bank ni sikashi ya. Adane eka da yeso a amen de yaba be pame omo na sa pame no se omo apame no me de bi susu say it shouldn't end there. That you see. Now, so this is the concluding part, or these are the concluding accounting gymnastics and all that. Now let's go to the concluding part. I want to read so we all understand what is going on. So Bryce Simon outlines everything that happened, right? So at this point, we'll see Europeans step in. On the back of the work done by the World Bank, into World Bank for my carry a year European bank in so babema sika. What you say? Now it talks about the procurement culture. And all that. Now Yanko Bonia womu edie. I've explained the procurement culture and all that. I see free at last. I say no. I say by 2022, DBG was fully operational and the incubation process could thus be terminated. On paper, strict governance procedures and independent directors were to serve as bulwark against waste, inefficiency, and procurement abuse. Into 2020, a bank we said no. I am member of 4 billion money in Yamani nano. MPP for my yeti as you say, Omo ayedi o motor bank no. Omo yenkrofobia no nonsense. Ye be bank ni ye so that boni BNC. Just in 2022 and then we are in 2025. If you almost can't answer me, you launch a bank in 2022. No, what happened? Yankenkain. I say, the first idea is here mysterious spending on consulting and technology. I say, the 2022 and 2023 financial statements of the bank show that spending on professional services was by far the largest expenditure category, amounting to over 60% of total spending. Next on the list is information technology and investor relations spending. In the bank ayati 2022, financial statement by from 2022-2023, yen head ye sika. Aye, bank ni sika no yen head ye aye yen kongo ha. You see, ye disike puduo bi. Akwa spende ewo bibi so. Ede ni ye spende ya yesi bibi the information technology. Bibi so the investor relations. You see, ede ne ekosui. Into here, any travel and hospitality. Almost spend 4 million. At your say, almost 4,505. But if you know how to read financial statements, once a almost cut off 3 zeros, and that is what is up here. At your say, who read the financial statement, you know, into open the real figure na ya bo hono, who the 3 zeros ebeka. Into we have travel and hospitality ya. Sika almost spend 4 million Ghana cedis in 2023. In 2022, almost spending 1 million. Not just almost 2 coin pa. Almost 2 coin 4 million Ghana cedis on travel. They are not 2 coin. Yeah, we understand IT and expenses. Young go here almost spending 11 million Ghana cedis in 2023. In 2022, so almost spending 30 million. Say, hey, my bank here mobile say mobile boa Ghana for now. Every year we'll be spending over 10 million Ghana cedis on just IT. Yeah, hey, and yeah, mwabe na odebe boa Ghana for you. And yeah, na muye. Because in 2022, Ayete Bank, they spent 13 million Ghana cedis on IT. And in 2023, they spent 11 million. And so it went on. And you see, corporate social responsibility. No, you see, is it personal? Corporate social responsibility. Corporate social responsibility, you say, okay, yamwa, what you say. And also, I know I mean, obiaye. But you see, one thing about President Akufo Addo said, most of these financial institutions, no, corporate social responsibilities, and what they did, and they say they helped pro MPP personalities, NGOs. In TB to say, be a President Akufo Addo yere a foundation and all running, about a state institution, Ebeman Isika. So you be a President Akufo Addo yere or run a foundation, or say we hear a janka, and now here yare for. It was one of the things under President Akufo Addo see here. Into to say companies be as a corporate social responsibilities near Koko Hemwa. And young one say MPP for no more NGOs no and I need this can ebo. But send your macano and on in the name of corporate social responsibility say yeah buan intino and no nim now go say omu yesikana as a some way. But do na no so no. Obi be kase omo fast aside no area sikana. Men di nipa konechi. Into her corporate social responsibilities are almost spending 68 million Ghana cedis in 2023. And at 2022, almost spending 50 million Ghana cedis. It went on to investor relations and communication. Communication, you see, any investors. Investors who you know more relating, you know more communicating. I'm spending 14 million Ghana cedis in 2023. And then 2 million Ghana cedis in 2022. Kasa Ben on investors, Kasa was spending 14 million Ghana cedis. And then director fees and allowances into your mumpeni for no musika and your allowances 9 million. And then they say your mujumanti no problem in here. And then administrative and sundry expenses. In total in 2023, bank I say wamumrambe Ghana for no. Sika wamo spend by themselves in 2023 122 million Ghana cedis. And in 2022 I say bank no 80 million Ghana cedis. See, hey, bank you be bueni. Obi a say brana be buano. Unko ansika o spend wo suni. Into over. And so, Brad Simon Rice, or see, the nearly 130 million Ghana cedis spent on various consultants and much more disclosed under other obscure headings has set off a train of disputes with internal auditors that have dragged on throughout 2023. How DBG even managed to get a clean audit report from KPMG puzzles some insiders. As the most contentious is a 17.12 million contract to an obscure Mauritius domiciled company called Kulana to procure licenses for the Terminus Transact plus the data lake business analytics add-on core banking solution in order to migrate DBG from CBG's Terminus instance, on which it had been perching. Buy subscriptions for Microsoft Dynamics 365, update licenses to an Oracle database, acquire project management tools and wire the ERP, analytics, and core banking solution together into a unified system through middleware design and execution. Inti auditors internal auditors shall say raise concern say hey sikeya mo report ya ba bontin ya sikeya mo ka say ya spending ye te company how ye auditing wa ha sikeya mo kin de wanwa e dey na mo pese mo trade inti ho na ntokwa ne sha ase 2023 e ho na auditors company say dabi de mo trade there. Into one of the deals our mukoko hu ye ne say yes mpanyifo no akwa sign some deal bi a ye ne company bi a company no omo Mauritius omo say Mauritius domiciled na broni eka eye let me just search right now so you understand the meaning of the word domicile. You can't domicile na tre say ade no asede watiada ana oh dabi domicile say the okay so the permanent home just say sa acronym no da sa acronym no wo ye ka say bibia ye domicile da na say nipa krono wo sa acronym da sa acronym ati ase enti company bia owo Mauritius sa company no and a company be also acronym no any kokoma ne contract ben ya say oh bank ne kran ye database in sensembi and your bank no software is be an ye use and ye hine na contract ne send ye dem company na $17 million that's ramity and so this is the letter and order. Now to also see the contract sum. It's said by internal auditors to have been 59% higher than budgeted for, and Kulana's advance payment guarantee only covered 4% of the amount at risk. Internal auditors say, 17 million ya mo say mo di kutia amount krofi. Eye high dodo because budget aya no, not just a contract we no, eye 59% higher than it. Now 59, I want to show you, okay? I want to show you everything. So let's check 59% of a year, 17 million. Okay, 59% of 17 million. Into 59%, about 59, where is the percentage? 59% times 17. Not just say, contract you say omo akwa sign omo say nebu aye den kra na nka oso mutua be 7 million nebu aye den kra na nka oso mutua 7 million na so moko kutia 17 million na chese sika na fine ebi mo ati chobo ana e den na akwa kosi it was the very first issue ati ase and the first issue a buy chese impanyifo hu said that bibi koso wa hanye. Nto say internal auditors step into the breach. Interestingly, as hinted throughout this piece, the internal auditors did not miss the evidence risk posed by the management's spending habits. Internal auditors say what bank or into to me who say two clear people. Impanyifo ayede omo ato bank na no. Ena ejumayefo internal auditors omoye auditors of the bank. Inti omo say spending ne cost enkaye because it wasn't the only spending, other spending in so no, and yes internal auditors ne eboremu. So say interestingly, as hinted throughout this piece, the internal auditors did not miss the evidence risk posed by the management spending habits. They explain the accounting gymnastics as follows. DBG first debited 148 million Ghana cedis to the assets under construction, capital works in progress ledger. Then right after the financial year was over in January 2024, its accountants placed the amount under assets in the computer software category. It's now a omo ye new reporter. Sikano ase omo hu baby omo ne enfanche. No the sikana kwa kwashe we ase because I mean basically, you man say 100 cedis say 100 cedis me fan konko dija. na me buy my baba be say 100 cedis no ma spending me na na obebi sa me so okay edwa na makwa akodi no nyama ben na me si o ebia me ton toast 1 cedi na me si o ebia me ton toast me to jeni 5 cedis me se me to nam 10 cedis na afa wo ya calculation ni na ehu ye hu say 100 cedis na me say me dia akwa akodi dwa no ensisi so nti o tell me say dabi budget am ye ma no eni kwa say 200 cedis 50 cedis pe na wo say o use inti sika no enkan no we he na afa ma baba tell so in toast na me say me to 1 cedi ne kra no say enye 1 cedi in toast na me to ne kra no in toast no me to 5 cedis o jeni na me say me inti ase na mpenyifo no sa na omo ye na afa sika no omo hu bebi a categories a share omo fan share ati ase in toast na buy na say in toast ye 1 cedi and the over say aba trem say in toast near 5 because my child say what chubu. And so basically that was what was going on. Now another issue was strange advanced payments. Also then the issue of advanced payments reared its head. Another boutique consultancy, Asamoah and Williams Consultancy, was advanced $320,000 out of 400,000 contracts to onboard banks onto the DBGs on lending program. It is absolutely unclear why anyone would need to pay a consultant $400,000 to approach 19 banks, as 4 banks were already on board from the onset, to sign up for low-cost money in a highly competitive and capital-deficient market such as Ghana. In the bank where Babe develop a system, or pese other banks, a Babe tosso. It's a consultants be, Eka trene say, ye pese okoko convince other banks no. No mo babe see a ye software no eso. So far, na banks are mo pese total number of banks are no mo pese babe see software ne so no 19 banks. But so far, na 4 banks our system ne so de da. Na obi ayama we juma say ko convince other banks no mo mra mbesi your system so no unya nya juma no ye say jisika yama 400 ye tua $400,000. And I was charging him $400,000. You see, okay, and the money ya na $320, nenka $80,000. Unya nye jumano. As to a jumano, where that's a bit to me, you unto me, you dikaya $320,000 no. You see, hey, that's this level of advance payments, dear. Nyanse nim. I say the auditor's job, though, and you see the entire case nyanse nim can say Ghana higher your way. Sa banks ya obeso mo babe si system this. Na the end of the day, si kana obenya ne kran. Ebia endru sa number of money a wo de ye we. Because banks no ba system ne so a ebia obenya benefits bi. But sa benefits no endu se si kana wo tua no. Nti de ntia na obetua sika bi se na na wo sanso tua advance. It was said the auditor's job, though, is not to question the business judgment of management. That is for the 1.2 million a year board directors. The auditor's concern here was that AWC took the money in July 2023, promised to deliver the banks by the contract deadline of December 2023, yet, as of April 2024, neither hair nor hide of a bank had been seen in the onboarding corridor. It is a auditor ne de no enye na ejuma no no. Ontumi metrel se ne amonyam ejuma contract obi amofa contract auditor ne de ontumi nye sa. Now so auditor ne hweye no mo contract am akwa sign with company mo ka say onfa banks embra so no o ka kire mo say ogisika in July 2023 and o ka kire mo say by December 2023 or the banks no ebeba mo system ne so by April 2024 na bank ba company bank ba kumpu tinwi any system ne so you see the sophisticated ways na Ghana ede koswa. As the internal auditors then took aim at the $3.8 million contract given to Kulana for project management office and business analysis support in February 2022 and July 2023, for which 35% was paid in advance, and also the $1.075 million awarded to AWC in May 2023 to manage and quality assure the relations between DBG and its investors. Again, deliverables failed to manifest. Sir, advance payment ya no mutu ni no at the end of the day o de anya say bia wutu advance payment no ka wunya so mfa so o mutu advance payment no mo ana edi sika ne mo kra no o ntumi nye adwuma no me mami asem obeka o say ena omo ntumi nye adwuma near the want to we in the name of politics and then oko baby say oko ye adwuma say your system you down oko baby. And therefore, also the internal auditors lamented the fact that the stated capital of both entities were less than $10,000 and that no due diligence report was available on them. And you see, then again, I tell you, when we talk about, once I make a say, you say procurement breach, ebini. You can't procurement breach, ebini. Ubekom no. Na mpenyimfo a ye de omote bank ya no yin sa companies ya ye mo contract no mo share companies nechi because at the end of the day juma ne kra wo mutumi nye na trese companies no ubekom no na bia omo kra na nyo omo adwuma no but ye pay contract na mani nti ya share da kwakote because auditors ni kwakwa companies ni mu no na companies no sebe mpre dia san omo nya company a na $10,000 impo omo wo company no omunya company ebeka some stated capital no more $10,000 omu ni $10,000 impo as stated capital obi a woni stated capital as $10,000 ye command a contractor ya man a contract of 17 million and normally no companies are womu ni stated capital of $10,000 what it simply means and you say bia ni pakra what company no ni sika o dabi what it simply means is a new company it is a new company. Now, another point, I say atrocious cost variations. Another instance of the cost variations seen in the lofty technology and management consulting planes was the strange case of the interior decor for the executive floor of DBG's head office, floor 5, a contract awarded to CPM Africa. The $600,000 budgeted for fine drapery and furniture was said to have somehow ballooned to $991,000, a 65% increase. Atrocious cost. A car ne boarding and a nyama boa a boarding. Yet wow, almost say the internal deco. Ye see bank a moment, you say bank ni mu ye fe. Ye kofa obi ababe decorate inside. Any of the contract in come company be a from CPM Africa. Budget and no more person the creative company no. $600,000. At the end of the day, sika yeko chairman nipakro $900,000. Costs for the bank's data center were also said to have escalated by 70% above approved budgets. Bank no the data center and also a car. As one analyst who reviewed some of the documents flowing from the internal bust up said, they are blowing cash like water. One wonders what EIB, which as at the end of 2023 hadn't disbursed any of its pledges, thinks of what it has been hearing. Just say analysts back and say, hey, for you almost sikati say issue, almost blue sikati say issue. I say the governance boogie. After reading all the briefings and the transcripts of conversations with analysts, whistleblowers, and unhappy insiders, one cannot escape the feeling that DBG is definitely on the same path that took NIB and ADB and some other development banks in Africa into the abyss of chronic insolvency. And went on, provided evidence. So this is, and you see, it looks like article where Bright Simmons said, a recent, Darby. It's an article that happened 2024, 12th November 2024. But guess what? President Akufo Addo didn't take any action. They saw this post. They saw what was going on. They didn't take any action. It had to take this new government to come and take this action from the Ministry of Finance. But MPP Nikra wants to ask you, because say, President Akufo Addo is in a bank. We see him Ghana for and go for the ato no NDC buy no almost sake sankro for no say nipa ko no nti the air cost wase. Now let's go back to Bright Simmons, the original year in Semno. I have detailed the source of conflict here and we've read it. The short version is that money was being spent as if it grew on trees. Shocking given that the source of funds included some very sophisticated development finance institutions such as the World Bank, European Investment Bank, the German KfW, and African Development Bank. Inti banks are na omodi omusika masa bank here no mo shi sika ni ti se nsuo no. Eya World Bank for sika, European Bank for sika, German Bank for sika, African Development Bank for sika. Ena na sa bank yi shi na sa no. Sika ya se omumfa mo Ghana fu. Because that is why Bright Simmons started by telling us the need na yesi sa development bank no. Uye businessman na ko jibusuan wo commercial banker. Busuan ne board den dodo. Nti development bank yi ejuma nka wo so mo ye ne say omo ma obusuan, ba busuan no ebo e bia 3% bi e wo so. E good businessman bia wo ye good businessman bia wo ko jibusuan na 3% pe na wo so a obeda nyame ase. Obedanya miase because I know se unya 10% profit krana. Utia 3% na at least ubedi 7% no. Ati ase. Ti 100 million na okokoje. Na bia 3% na that's why. Odi ko ye adwuma na onya 10% profit 10 million no. Utia 3% no. Ati ase. Ti utia 100 million na ba sanso utia the 3% which is 3 million. Nti no sa 10% profits na wenya no. Unso dia 7 million ewechi meboa. Undidi ye. Where did he? And that was the essence of the bank. The entire the bank ne buy no. But she na womo ye. Blow sika. I say rather than sincerely engage the internal protesters and external activists, the board and management chose to gaslight, prompting these further reports. Into what ya? Bright Simmons say, Emrana ultra sa in semi letters see. In penifona womo shi sika no. Sabi omoni auditors no internal auditors no muni omunya asem no ebetena se atreche nsem amom atro no dabi ye de ye mpanyimfo mo auditors no mo ye hwan den na mo betre yen omuni omon tokwa gidigidi india no sha ase o say civil war isi e wo DBG. He goes on to now bring out a ballot for, and you see I think say the NDC government based on because NDC by and a ballot for January 2025. Omode audit report ekokoma NDC aban. Inti NDC aban based on sa ballot report ati ase and omode sa case ampenyin for no. But Osha ballot report now say assess and verify the allegations made by Bright Simmons which are not covered by the work outlined above and make recommendations to address them. Ati ase. So this was a introduction. Development Bank Ghana Limited has recently become aware of allegations based on a leaked procure to pay risk management internal audit report. Given the above, DBG has requested Dallots to perform the following. The NDC by no, ena a year or more letter. Eko koma Dallots for ekas omunya investigation. Na investigations ni bino. Bright Simmons and someone na walk. But under MPP no. Omo infi Bright Simmons. Omo anka omunya we NDC by January. And you can't say Bright Simmons allegations no yen investigations e wo ho. The investigations no report na aba. The report na aba no eno ehun sem e na ba be wie ha. Ya pa me mpenifo no. But you see, just as I'm saying, at this point, what we tie me aba be do points we be obedi me dance here say, just sacking these people is not enough. Me boa, mon kan try me. Mon try mo adwen comment box ni mo. E da say